The hum of the old neon sign outside flickered against the diner window, casting a faint pink glow across Daniel's table. The place was almost empty, just the waitress at the counter tapping her pen against her notepad, a cook humming behind the half-open kitchen door, and Daniel sitting alone in the corner booth. It was Thanksgiving evening, but for him, it felt like any other lonely Thursday. The world outside was wrapped in a chilly mist. People were home with family, kitchens filled with laughter, warmth, and the aroma of roasted turkey. But Daniel's apartment was silent. It had been that way since his parents passed, 3 years, 2 months, and 6 days ago. He didn't count on purpose, but grief had a strange way of marking time in the quiet spaces between moments. He stirred the soup in front of him absent-mindedly, watching the steam curl upward like ghosts of memories. He could still remember his mother's laugh, the way she'd insist everyone at the table say one thing they were thankful for before touching a single bite. His father would grumble, pretending to resist, but his soft smile always gave him away. They used to sit together in their small living room, the old radio playing holiday tunes, his mom fussing about the cranberry sauce, his dad carving the turkey too early. But now there was no radio, no laughter, no smell of roasted anything. Just Daniel, his reflection in the diner window, and a bowl of soup that was quickly losing its warmth. He picked up his spoon, then put it back down. Eating alone had become normal, but tonight it stung a little deeper. Maybe it was the holiday lights outside, or maybe it was the way families passed by the window, holding hands, smiling as they carried bags of leftovers home. He envied them, not for the food, but for the company. The bell over the diner door jingled, pulling him from his thoughts. He glanced up. A woman stepped inside, brushing the rain from her worn coat. She looked to be in her early 30s, her hair damp, her shoes muddy. Behind her, a little boy clutched her hand tightly, his small face pale and tired. He couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. Even the waitress called, forcing a cheerful tone, booth or counter. The woman hesitated, glancing around. There were plenty of empty tables, but she didn't move. Instead, she looked toward the floor, then at her son, who tugged at her sleeve. "Mama," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I'm hungry." Something in Daniel's chest tightened. The boy's words echoed softly in the quiet diner. The woman gave a weak smile to the waitress, her voice trembling. I was just wondering if we could stay for a bit. We don't really have." She trailed off, searching for the right words. The waitress frowned sympathetically but hesitated, the kind that wasn't cruel, just uncertain. Maybe she'd seen too many faces like theirs, people who wanted warmth but couldn't afford a meal. Before the silence could stretch, Daniel found himself standing up. "You can sit here," he said suddenly, surprising even himself. The woman blinked, startled. "Oh, no, we couldn't, please," Daniel said softly, gesturing toward his booth. "It's just me, plenty of space." The boy's eyes lit up immediately, looking at his mother with hope. After a brief pause, she nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Thank you," she whispered, leading her son to the seat across from Daniel. As they sat down, Daniel caught the faint scent of rain on their clothes, mixed with something earthy, like the smell of autumn leaves after a storm. The boy pressed his small hands against the side of the booth, his eyes darting between Daniel and the menu. He clearly couldn't read it, but his excitement was impossible to hide. "I'm Daniel," he said, smiling a little. The woman returned a shy smile. "I'm Claire. This is my son, Noah." The boy gave a small wave. "Hi." Daniel grinned. "Hi, Noah. You like pancakes?" Noah nodded vigorously. "With syrup." Daniel chuckled, waving to the waitress. "Could we get a couple of pancake plates, extra syrup?" The waitress nodded, her expression softening, coming right up. As she walked away, Claire's eyes glistened with gratitude. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "It's Thanksgiving. No one should be hungry, or alone tonight." For a moment, neither spoke. The boy was busy drawing shapes with his finger in the condensation on the window, humming to himself. Claire folded her hands around the warm coffee cup the waitress had brought, her fingers trembling slightly from the cold. She finally whispered, "We were at the shelter earlier, but it filled up before we got in. I told him we'd be okay. I didn't know where else to go." Daniel looked at her, his heart heavy but full of something unfamiliar. You're a sense of purpose, maybe. You found the right place, he said gently. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside that little diner, something quietly shifted. 3 strangers had crossed paths by chance, yet in that moment, it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like the universe, weary and kind, had decided that no one should eat alone that night. The clatter of dishes and the hiss of the coffee machine filled the diner as warmth slowly crept back into the air. Daniel watched the steam rise from the plates. The waitress set before them stacks of golden pancakes glistening with butter, syrup dripping down the sides, and a small bowl of fruit that looked like sunshine after the rain. The boy's eyes widened in pure delight, his small hands gripping the fork like he had discovered treasure. "Go ahead, Noah," Daniel said softly. "They're all yours." Noah looked at his mother for permission. She nodded, smiling faintly. "Go on, sweetheart." The boy didn't need to be told twice. He took a bite so big it almost didn't fit in his mouth, syrup sticking to his cheeks as he laughed. The sound, light and free, filled the empty booth like a melody. Daniel hadn't realized how much he'd missed the sound of simple joy until that moment. Claire, sitting across from him, seemed hesitant at first. Her hands lingered around her coffee cup, as if she wasn't sure she was allowed to relax. Her coat hung loosely from her frame, and her eyes, though kind, carried the exhaustion of someone who had fought too many unseen battles. "You should eat too," Daniel said, gently nudging the plate closer to her. She blinked, almost startled by his kindness. "Oh, I will. It's been a while since anyone's done something like this for us." Daniel smiled softly. "Well, it's about time someone did." She finally took a forkful, her eyes closing for a brief second as if the warmth of the food reached her soul before it reached her stomach. "This tastes like home," she whispered. Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. The 3 of them ate quietly for a few moments, the only sounds being Noah's cheerful humming and the soft clink of silverware. Outside, the rain tapped gently on the windows, but inside, everything felt calm, as if the world had stopped to give them a moment of peace. After a while, Noah set down his fork, syrup all over his hands and a satisfied grin on his face. "Mr. Daniel, are you all by yourself?" he asked innocently. Daniel hesitated, taken off guard. He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, I guess I am. Just me tonight." The boy frowned. "That's sad. Mama says food tastes better when you share it." Claire flushed slightly. "Noah," she began, embarrassed, but Daniel really laughed, for the first time in months. "Your mama's a smart woman," he said, "and you're right, kiddo. It does taste better with company." Noah grinned, proud of himself, and returned to his pancakes with renewed energy. Claire relaxed a little, watching her son, her expression softening. She turned to Daniel. "You don't have to be alone, you know," she said gently. He glanced at her, a little surprised by her tone. There was no pity in it, just quiet understanding, the kind that comes from someone who knows what loneliness feels like. "Yeah," he said finally, "maybe not tonight." The waitress passed by, smiling as she refilled their coffee cups. "You folks doing okay?" "We're great," Daniel replied, meaning it. As the night went on, conversation began to flow more easily. Claire told him about how she used to work at a florist before the shop closed, about how she'd been moving from shelter to shelter while looking for something steady. She didn't complain, she spoke with quiet resilience, her voice steady despite the hardships. Daniel listened, really listened, realizing how much courage it took for her to smile through everything. In turn, she asked about him. He told her about his parents, how they used to own a little bookstore downtown, how they'd fill it with warmth and laughter, and how empty it felt after they were gone. "I stopped celebrating holidays," he admitted. Didn't seem right doing it alone. Claire looked at him with empathy. "Maybe it's not about celebrating alone," she said softly. "Maybe it's about finding new reasons to." Her words hung in the air, gentle but profound. Noah, meanwhile, had begun lining up the sugar packets like tiny building blocks, his laughter bubbling up every time one fell over. Daniel helped him stack them higher, pretending to be serious about sugar tower engineering, which made the boy giggle even harder. The waitress, watching from the counter, smiled knowingly. The three of them, a stranger, a mother, and a boy, looked less like an unlikely trio and more like a family who belonged together. As the plates emptied and coffee cups cooled, Daniel felt something he hadn't in a long time, warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the feeling of being seen, of sharing a table not out of pity or charity, but connection. When the check arrived, Daniel slid it toward himself before Claire could reach for it. "My treat," he said quickly. She tried to protest. "You've already done enough." He shook his head, smiling. "You both gave me something I didn't even know I needed tonight. Let me do this." Claire's eyes softened. She nodded, whispering, "Thank you." Outside, the rain had stopped. Through the window, the world looked cleaner, quieter, as if washed anew. Inside the diner, the lights glowed warmer than before, and Daniel realized something simple yet powerful. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness doesn't just feed an empty stomach, it feeds an empty heart. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man eating alone. The diner's neon lights buzzed faintly, casting soft pink and amber hues across the rain-slicked window. Outside, the storm had quieted to a drizzle, the world shimmering under the glow of passing headlights. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of coffee and maple syrup, and the kind of silence that only comes after a full meal, peaceful, unhurried, content. Noah was the first to surrender to sleep. His small head rested on his folded arms atop the table, his toy car clutched tightly in one hand. A faint smile lingered on his lips, the kind of smile that only comes when a child finally feels safe and full. Claire brushed his hair gently from his forehead, her fingers trembling slightly, not from cold, but from the exhaustion that lived deep in her bones. Daniel watched her quietly. There was something profoundly moving about the way she looked at her son, a mix of love, worry, and fierce determination. It reminded him of his mother, years ago, sitting by the window and waiting for him to come home from school on stormy days. She used to say that love wasn't about grand gestures, it was about showing up when no one else did. "You have a good boy," Daniel said softly. Claire smiled faintly. "He's my whole world." She looked down at Noah, her eyes glistening. "It hasn't been easy, but he keeps me going. Every time I think I can't do it anymore, he'll laugh or hold my hand, and somehow it's enough to keep moving." Daniel nodded, his gaze distant. "I know what that feels like, needing something to hold on to. After my parents passed, I didn't have much left. I guess I just stopped trying to reach for anyone." Claire studied him for a moment. "But you reached for us tonight." The words landed softly, but with the weight of truth. Daniel smiled, a small, sad smile that slowly turned genuine. "Yeah, maybe I needed to." The waitress came by quietly, collecting the empty plates with a knowing look. "You folks take your time," she said warmly. "No rush." She refilled their coffee cups one last time before slipping back behind the counter. For a long while, Daniel and Claire sat in comfortable silence, sipping coffee and watching the reflection of streetlights dance on the wet pavement outside. The world felt suspended, like time itself had decided to pause just for them. Claire broke the silence first. "We didn't plan to be out tonight. The shelter filled up faster than usual. I told Noah we'd just walk until we found somewhere warm, even if it was just to sit. I didn't think anyone would." She stopped herself, voice catching. "People don't usually notice us anymore." Daniel leaned forward, his tone gentle. "I noticed." She looked up, surprised by the sincerity in his eyes. "I think sometimes we all get used to walking past each other," he continued, "pretending we don't see. Maybe it's easier that way, but tonight, I didn't want to look away." Her eyes shimmered, tears she didn't try to hide gliding down her cheeks. "Thank you, Daniel. You didn't just feed us, you reminded me there's still kindness in the world." Daniel swallowed hard, his throat tight. "You reminded me there's still connection." I forgot what that felt like. For a long moment, neither spoke. The diner lights flickered slightly, and the low hum of a country song played from the jukebox in the corner. It was one of those old tunes about home, about finding hope in unexpected places. It filled the space like a quiet prayer. Noah stirred slightly in his sleep, murmuring something incoherent before settling again. Claire smiled down at him, brushing his cheek. "He'll remember this, you know," she whispered. "Maybe not every detail, but he'll remember that someone cared when it mattered." Daniel's eyes softened. "Then maybe it'll remind him to do the same for someone else one day." She nodded. The world could use more of that. He looked at her, then at the boy, and something inside him, a space that had felt hollow for too long, began to fill. Not with grand emotion or sudden joy, but with a quiet, steady warmth. The kind that said you're not alone anymore. When the clock above the counter struck midnight, the waitress flipped the open sign to closed. She didn't ask them to leave, just gave a small nod of understanding as she wiped down the counter. Daniel reached for his coat, then paused. "I can drive you somewhere," he offered. "There's a small inn down the street. I'll cover it for the night." Claire's eyes widened. "You've done enough already, I insist," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You and Noah deserve a safe place to rest." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Thank you for everything." As they stepped outside, the cold air met them with a soft bite, but the rain had stopped. The streets were quiet, glistening under the streetlights. Daniel opened his umbrella, holding it over both of them as they walked to his car. Noah slept soundly in his mother's arms, his little hand still holding the toy car he refused to let go of. When they reached the car, Claire turned to Daniel. "You could have eaten alone tonight," she said softly, "but instead you chose to care." Daniel smiled, looking at her, then at the boy. "Funny thing is," he said, "I thought I was helping you, but really you helped me." She looked puzzled. "How?" He looked up at the rain-specked sky, his breath fogging in the cold. "You reminded me that family isn't just who we're born with. Sometimes it's who sits with you when you least expect it." Claire's eyes shimmered again as she whispered, "Maybe we both needed this night."